giggling here. So I said that if we got some questions about Act 1 that we could answer, I'd try to throw together a little Q&A. And we did get some questions about Act 1. And we also asked our dear friend Michaela, who listens to the show and had a whole bunch of questions for Katie. We asked her if she wanted to sit in and participate in the conversation. And she said yes. Yay! Yay! So thank you for joining us, Michaela. Welcome.
It is an utter pleasure to be here.
So, just to establish where you're coming from, I want to ask you a quick two-part question to kick things off. First, what is your relationship to the horror and fantasy genres? Are they in your typical wheelhouse, that sort of thing? And second, what is your relationship with role-playing games and actual play podcasts? Like, how much of what you hear on the show is familiar to you in terms of the world or the game mechanics? And how much is new?
Terrific. Where do horror and fantasy live not in my life?
There we go.
Is a more apt question. I'm a huge horror fan, fantasy, all of it. I like navigating these spaces. I feel like they show so much more about humanity than humanity will openly reveal. And it's so... I love the gore and the gush and all of it. I'm a big fan. As far as my relationship with role-playing games, I'm a noob, very novice. It has actually been incredibly useful to me as someone who's new to listen to you all and how you learning vocabulary, and as far as, just kind of sharing space when you are developing space at the same time, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the holidays, my fella got us Gloomhaven.
Oh, nice.
And I think the box weighs around 40 pounds. And funny story, we going through the instructions, and we're playing with all the pieces and taking everything out and unwrapping and all of the things. And I was getting very antsy. And I'm like, let's just play. We're just gonna play. We're just gonna throw everything at the wall and we're just gonna play. And we did it all wrong. It was all wrong. We screwed it up. We fucked it up so bad. We were like, we literally didn't read this one page.
Oh no.
And so, but I love failure. I love being wrong. And so it was.
You must really like us.
I love you deeply. But so that's been super fun, and we're getting back into that. So I've a toe in the water. You all have presented, I feel, this game in a way that makes it so accessible to every level of listener, whether they are familiar with RPGs or D&D or what have you. And the fact that you all went in so blank at the top and were discovering with your listeners, it really enriched my experience of it. And it kind of felt like we were all coming at it from a similar place, not exactly the same, but similar. It's been really, really fun.
Oh, thank you. That's great to hear.
Thank you.
And that is one of the things that we wanted. Like, the way we started the story, the way we did, was partially so that we would have to actually kick off by explaining a whole bunch of things about character class and those mechanics.
The minutia is really fascinating.
Yeah, I don't want to rehash the entire discussion that you and I had on chat today.
Why
but
not?
The questions that you were asking were really really interesting and exciting to me, because I got to explain to you, that thing that you're coming at from a character perspective. I'm like, that's a class thing, and that was our interpretation of that class thing, and how it became context on air, and that was really, really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what I thought we'd do here is we got a whole bunch of questions folks sent us in. I thought I would have Michaela ask them to us, and then she can do any follow-up or ask any questions she wants as she goes. So here we go.
Outstanding. We'll start with a question from Lauren, and this is for Rob specifically. Lauren asks, how dare you?
This is my favorite question.
And I want to echo that.
So I will say then, the reason I do dare is because of these four people, and they're continually yes-anding what nonsense and garbage I throw at them.
Here.
I wouldn't have the ability to do whatever, Lauren, bothered you so much if they didn't roll with it.
All right. Well, Ian asks, What were your favorite moments of Act 1?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in the conversation we recorded right after we finished playing Act 1, but it's been a year and a half now. We've all had a chance to revisit those episodes as they've come out. So, with the benefit of distance, what were everyone's favorite moments from Act 1?
I want to answer this one right off the bat with two favorite moments that came in Chapter 12 for me. A small one was Katie discovering that she was rolling a D12.
Oh my God, that's fine. That was fine.
Did I steal yours? Oh, sorry.
You're gonna steal the other
I
one
love that
too.
moment.
I know you are.
I'm going to steal the other one.
Probably somebody is.
Same. It's the same chapter. It's when
Okay, maybe not.
It's when Gull goes rogue
Soloing.
and
Yeah.
continues to skulk forward, like unbelievably.
To me, that whole sequence is like a Wes Anderson movie where he's going further and further and further beyond the bounds of safety, and the three of us are just sitting in the reception area, like.
It started to feel a little like this is unbelievable that this is actually continuing to happen. And so, like, what does that mean for the like? How do we interpret that as a character moment too? And like, how do we feel about this person who can do this? I loved
And
that.
then come back with like tiny fetuses clinging to him.
Yeah.
Covered in fetuses.
Right. It wasn't just the going out. It was also that
Yeah.
return.
All right, I'm just going to say the one that's my favorite because it's the violin story. I think we probably said that on the other recording too, but that still haunts me, the end of that psychometry reading.
And that is that's the last one that I improvised. All the rest of them were all scripted, but that was the last of the ones. That was the one that made me realize, oh shit, I better write these down so that I don't forget the things that I want to say in them.
Wait a minute. You improvised that one?
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare you?
You can hear me on the raw recording go, I'm not really ready to do this, but I guess let's just do it.
You say that every time, though.
I really
You
that.
just assume you're lying when
Yeah.
you say that.
Oh, no.
Your idea of not ready is a lot different than everybody else's
Everyone-
idea of not
Yeah, I
ready.
think
This is
that's
true.
very true.
Okay, well, it was not scripted.
Fair enough.
I'm awfully fond of Dora waking up next to Barnabas.
That
One of my favorite openings to an episode, and
yeah.
clearly, I think my favorite end moment.
Yeah.
I've got two. My favorite serious one was, again, Rob's funeral for Reynard. I absolutely, I have listened to that probably too many times, and it has made me weep on more than one occasion. Just thinking about everything that's been going on in the past couple years and how much awfulness there has been and how much death, and every time I listen to it, it somehow renews my faith in the world, which is really says something about me and something about your talent, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
And then it's a very small moment. It's sometime after Dora's madness, and I can't remember what starts the conversation, but Grip asks her a question about, well, what did you take away from, your counseling session? And she says something about the futility of existence, and the timing on it is so unbelievably good. That was your... No, I can't do it, but it was
That
like...
was your fucking takeaway.
But you're so completely flummoxed. Like, that was what you got from this counseling
8
session.
hours.
Oh,
and that's what you got.
It was so. Every time I listen to it, it makes me again cry from laughter because it's so funny. It's so funny.
pure.
I love that moment.
I want to add one, and that's Ray's eulogy of Winter, which
Yeah.
also
Yes.
he improvised over the course of that recording that episode.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
that
was
was
like,
beautiful.
I think I'm going to do this. And then as we did everything else, he was just sitting there working, looking things up on the
notes.
internet, making notes, writing shit down. It was pretty
Outstanding.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
My favorite is it's in the interlude, and it is the moment that I pass out your old character sheets and hearing all of you gasp. It's the kind of trick I can really only pull once per campaign, and I didn't know if that was going to be the right time to do it. But it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, all right, yes, this is going to be fun, and this is going to be meaningful, and this is an interesting way to get back into this together as a group. So
It was also great because we all came in there thinking we were going to do something else.
Yes.
And we were all like armed with agendas for how we were going to handle coming back to that records room
Yeah,
and what we were going to say to Gull. And then you're like, no, we're going to do something else, something that broke my heart for the first time.
One of my favorite moments that became a reoccurring moment for Grip actually was episode 2, 3. You immediately are unable to look at slashing weapons. And how long?
That was
episode
the first
1.
episode. That was one of the very first things that happened to Grip in the whole
That
thing.
was so bogus, and I was so pissed on your behalf. And every time it surfaced, it played out so beautifully and comically, but you just rolled with it. No pun, fuck's sake. But that was great. All of these traps and things that came up, the navigation throughout all of it was so captivating. Let's see. Benjamin. Benjamin has a 2-part question. The first part is the small black and orange fox that appeared in Dora's vision of Tima and Gulliver's wedding in chapter 34, who apparently was Tima's familiar Reynard, the same fox the team found dead in chapter 3 and which Gull gave to Winter to inter in the chapel in chapter 10?
Long question, simple answer, yes. Same fox.
Wow.
All right. The second part of that question is, if so, how did Gull recognize him?
I think this will be a fun thing to answer. So you want to start that, Johnny?
Absolutely. So when Rob asked us to play in this campaign, he said, so you're going to have to trust me because we're going to start off the campaign and you don't know anything about your character. And I was like, okay. How do you play a character where you don't know anything about your character? So I took just a couple things that I thought that this person would care about. And one of the things that he cared deeply about was animals.
I never picked up on that. Oh, wait, no, I did.
And so he never actually knew Reynard. He didn't remember him in any way, shape, or form, but he felt immense tragedy and empathy for this poor fox that had obviously been tortured and killed.
And then what happens is Johnny does that, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, you know what? I bet he did know this fox in the before times. I bet they did have a relationship. So then I start telling myself a story about what the deal with the actual real Reynard that was Tima's familiar and Johnny's character before all this happened. So there are psychometry visions we have not even gotten to yet that involve the two of them. But the instant John did that, I was like, okay, all right. So this fox is a part of the story now.
Yeah.
And I had never, I just kind of put it there as a dog to die and make Katie sad. And then,
How dare you?
and then it became, and obviously then the whole Barnabas / fake Renard thing happened, and suddenly foxes became this huge part of the campaign that I never could have imagined from the beginning. And it's fun stuff like that, where I just kind of sometimes I'll just throw shit out there, and then if they grab onto it and make a story out of it, then that's the story, and then we start to run with that, and that becomes the thing.
Yeah, awesome. Becky asks, what effect did the rainbow fog have on reality? Or was it just this is what an onirigen. Oh, that's how that word is spelled. Guys, this has been so great. I'm sorry, I'm derailing this for a moment. In talking with Katie over the past several weeks, I type what I think is how it's spelled, and then parentheses, SP question mark, and parentheses, and she's always correcting me. So, onirigen, that's what it is. Okay, let's take that question again. Becky asks, what effect did the rainbow fog have on reality, or was it just this is what an onirigen looks like thing?
So there were two different kinds of onirigens that we experienced in Act 1. the main Onirigens, which were the 3 that they fought at the very, very end, and the one they fought in the Northwest Tower. Those were the fully functioning Onirigens. Those are the ones that were actually spilling dream stuff from the Plane of Dreams out into the real world, slowly enveloping the entire asylum into a bubble, which would then get sucked off into the Dimension of Dreams. The rainbow fog that was coming out of Dr. Lissandro was a little bit different because she was a malfunctioning Onirigen. We actually do have a conversation in Act 2 about why specifically she was malfunctioning. But on a purely mechanical level, this is just fun information about the Onirigen creature in the game. Effectively, the fog that was coming out of Dr. Lissandro, because it was linked to the Dimension of Dreams, does this thing where it makes anybody who steps into it fall asleep. But there are any number of kinds of Onirigens. You can rip a hole in somebody to any number of the outer planes, and the shit that comes out of them is totally different. So in this case, the rainbow fog makes you fall asleep. If you tear a hole to the abyss, then the mist that comes out fills you with terror and makes you shaken. If you tear a hole to, to Elysium, the mists that come out fill you with elation and confuse you. You can tear holes to the elemental planes, which in that case, like, the fog is filled with like acid damage or electrical damage or cold damage or fire damage. So there are many, many different kinds. We've only so far experienced basically 2 iterations of one kind. But the reason why it was rainbow was because it was malfunctioning, and we will talk more about that in Act 2.
John Henry asks, how many of the twists and turns are the gaming module, and how much is your game master?
How dare you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We talk a lot in Act 1 about how Act 1 and kind of Act 2, the way the adventure is structured, they're structured as sandboxes, which I realize we use as a shorthand, and maybe not everybody knows exactly what that means.
Yes, please explain. Noob.
Yeah, so there's kind of there's a spectrum of adventure design that can go from, on one hand, to a sandbox, on the other hand, to event-driven. An event-driven adventure is basically like, here's where the characters are, and then the adventure tells you what happens, and then they have to make whatever choices they make. Then the adventure tells you this is the next thing that happens, and the characters make those choices.
Gotcha.
In the case of a sandbox, the setup is really, here's where the players are, here are all the people in that town, here's the things in the past that have happened in that town, and here's what the people in town are planning on doing. And then you just kind of set the characters loose, and the GM knows what the non-player characters' motivations are, and the players have their own motivations, and then anything can happen. The characters can go wherever the players want them to go. The game master can have the NPCs do whatever they want them to do, but there's no like story structure to it. So this particular adventure is much more sandboxy, with like 2 choke points. The first choke point is the barricade. They basically establish one thing you have to do to get past it, which is to kill a certain number of doppelgangers. That's to force you to investigate a certain part of the area, though how you go about doing that is entirely up to you. And then the second kind of choke point is, when we got to the point where it's like, we've cleared out through the administration wing, we've cleared out the east ward, now we know we have to get to the north. We know none of the ways to get there are good, but there's kind of a built-in choke point there of like, do everything below that first because you can access it. So basically any plot that happens is really generated by us.
That's great.
Can you speak to a term called railroading?
Do you want to talk about it as a player?
About how I intensely dislike it and will often fight against it, kicking and screaming.
Yeah, I'm going to look a little something up real quick here. So you talk about railroading.
Railroading is sort of an extreme version of like event-driven stuff where literally you cannot progress forward in any way, shape, or form unless you complete a quest. So like if it was like a video game, you're like, you have to complete this thing to get to the next thing. And then once you complete that, then they go, here's another quest for you to do. And you can't get to the next thing until you complete that. And over and over and over again. So your idea of free will kind of disappears, which is not really, then to me, this game becomes a lot less fun.
Sure.
So that's sort of the general idea of it.
So when I saw this question, I was trying to think of like what is a good example of a plot twist to talk about, and I thought about the Baisley doppelganger, the murder of Winter, and all that shit that happened right there. None of which is in the adventure. Baisley's name is only mentioned once in the entire book, and there's only 2 sentences about her. And all it says is, Baisley Harbor is a patient who's quick to smile and sleepwalks into the hall. She might be replaced mid-adventure by a doppelganger who seeks to destroy the chapel's Desnan shrine. Now, what I love about what keeps drawing me back to Paizo adventure paths is I tend to love the sandboxes they create in that they're interesting locations with interesting NPCs, like I think Firestone Asylum is, but they're also great at one-sentence hooks that they don't have to expand on, but like if they grab you, like you immediately start telling yourself a story. So I like, she might be replaced mid-adventure by a doppelganger. Then I start going like, how would that work? Well, it's not like a doppelganger can really wander into there. They're in a closed environment. Oh, so she's doppelganger from the beginning. Well, then what's she doing? And how would she go about this? Like, under what circumstances could she possibly, like, she's always watched. They're only in a single room. So then I start to tease that out. And then I'm like, oh, but these particular doppelgangers are very, very depraved and evil. So they'd want to do something. Under what circumstances would they? And then the brain just goes, and then that interacts with what the players do, and then you end up with story. You know.
Yeah.
He separates everyone before that. We all come back to the chapel in a state. Tima has just let Reynard get away.
That's right.
She's upset.
Yep.
She comes in talking to Winter, air quotes, saying, I know you have something you need to talk to me about, but I have to clean him up.
Yeah.
I have to make sure he's okay. I have to, she's agitated.
Yeah.
And Rob separates all 4 of them.
Monster.
Has Winter tell Dora, can you just do this one thing before you go and deal with
Can you just show your back to me?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Look at this knife. It's got to go right in there.
It's kind of infuriating to listen to because you can hear it happening while it's happening, but I didn't know it was happening when I was at the table.
Well, as a listener, you're just like, well, okay, yeah, Winter's the boss. She
the big-
needs something.
and
All
the
right,
big-
well,
the
you got to
big
put down the fucking fox.
The big joke about anyone, like, never split the party up. Like, that's rule 1. You should never split the party up because it never goes well. And usually we're pretty aware of not letting that happen, but he just systematically, with perfectly plausible reasons that didn't alert me at all.
Sort of appealed to our own like little vanities and our own like little, the things
I'm gonna,
we value.
I've got a little
right?
conversation, a little special conversation for each of
Tolman
you.
wants to tell me how valued I am. Huh?
I
Yeah.
planned
And I wanna
something
tell him-
special for you.
Oh, how nice!
And also, right before we came in, when we were at the barricade, I remember asking, "Oh, did we set up anything of like checking to make sure that we're not, doppelgangers or anything like that?" No, you didn't set up.
No, you did
anything
not.
Like that. Like,
No,
and
you did
then
not.
and then just nothing.
Yeah, right.
I thought of another favorite moment that I think is really important.
Yes.
And being a horror fan, I think it's vital to point out. While everybody else, after the Tatterman, was like, oh, he's dead. The only person who goes to check on it is the only woman in your party. And she was 100% right, guys.
Yeah.
Too fucking easy. It was too easy. I had such a, Grip goes to check on Gull, and Ray's like, oh, wait, Dora, what's going on? And she's like, I'm going to grab this knife. I'll be right back.
I'm just going to make sure we're actually done here.
We're actually done here.
She's the Ripley.
She truly is. And
Yeah.
what would Ripley do? Ripley would make sure.
Fucking stab the body over and
Stab
over
the
again.
body. Oh god, it was so. Oh god, I remember exactly where I was in my apartment when I was like, "That's my bitch." Oh no, it's not. She was right. It was so wonderful. I was like leaping and clenching my fists in
that's
my
great.
apartment all by myself. And now, this question is from me. would Ratchmanby have actually eaten the children, or was there the possibility that he could have been a useful ally?
He would have eaten the children.
Oh yeah.
That was such a fan pandering question. Want him to be so much better than he is because you like the voice.
I love the voice.
So hang on. So it's actually two questions. The first question, the answer is unequivocally yes. Ratch would have eaten those children at the drop of a hat. However, it is possible he could have been a useful ally.
I just want to say,
Nope.
well, we
Nope.
all know where you stand on
Nope.
this.
Nope. And oh no.
The possibility of a catchphrase like "sick 'em, Ratch," I feel like would have been really great.
Yeah,
Could have been.
we missed an
Could
opportunity
have had
there.
legs.
Yeah.
You've been ratched.
Ooh.
Oh, you do. Ratchmanby knows all. I mean, that's the catchphrase, right?
Ratchmanby knows.
Ratchmanby is dead. Long live Ratchmanby.
No. No.
Praise.
Tasted pretty crunchy and good.
Oh,
Pretty
I don't
crunchy
think
and
so
good.
because it was diseased meat.
How is our favorite moment of the entire book not the guy running down the hallway yelling praise right before he gets shot at?
Also a moment that always makes me laugh out loud every single praise. Boom.
When is that? I don't remember that.
It's right. So we find the guy hanging on the. I'm sorry. We find the guy hanging on the meat hook with the ghoul, and we let him go. And he
right, yes,
runs
yes.
straight to the barricade, and they're telling him to stop. And he just says, praise. And he gets riddled with the gospel.
I remember now.
It was a mercy.
So much fun.
I had a question for you, Rob, if that's okay. I was wondering if you could talk. Well, this kind of falls along the lines of how dare you?
Great.
We've got things coming up in the story that we're hearing is not all in the book, and I'm curious about stuff like the corpse orgy, or are they kids wearing dog masks, or dogs wearing the faces of children? All of this like really grotesque horror stuff. The diapers on turned into torches. So what's your inspiration?
Life.
Where do you get these great ideas?
So, we talked about the joy making. Katie asked, is that a thing in Golarion, or did you make that up? And it turns, that was a thing in Golarion that I saw at one point, and I was like, hold on to it, use it at some point. So a lot of tidbits like that, like one of the reasons why I love playing this game in this world is that the world of Golarion is so huge and well developed and with so many interesting things going on in it. So I stumbled across the corpse orgy, which is an actual thing in this world. And at just one point, I'm like, grab that. Gonna use that at some point. But so like the torch that was a broken table leg wrapped in a soiled diaper.
Yeah.
Now that's just coming from me. And as I'm, I knew when we started that the four of you would be bombarded with images and stories in your dreams and memories that meant literally nothing to you. But I wanted to plant seeds that we could pay off on for 6 full acts. And so my thought was, I know what this torch is. And I'm like, the way to make something mundane be something that we remember and ask a question about 3 years later is by giving it a specific detail that makes it stick out in our heads. So that when we circle back to that detail, whether it's book 3 or book 6, by simply referencing there'll be a reason, you'll know why it was wrapped in a diaper. And then hopefully that whole memory comes back and it makes a I'm also trying to structure this a little bit like a mystery, not in a building towards a twist sense, but in providing a lot of re-listenability, providing information on levels that can make some sense that you can act on as they come out, but also when you return to them later, you'll find out like, oh shit, that was a setup for book 5. I had no fucking clue.
You're literally Nolaning this thing.
Well, that's my favorite kind of storytelling. Like stories that play with time, whether it's either time travel or playing with the order in which we experience events is like one of my particular interests and something that I thought I could bring to this story as the person who is giving it a framing. I mean, we're telling the story, but I'm framing it, and I wanted to. That's the kind of stuff that I geek out on. I love the idea of, you experience one thing, it means one thing. You experience it a second time, and you actually know what it meant. Like those are the kind of stories I love going back to, reading over and over again, watching over and over again, that kind of thing.
We have I'm so sorry. We have a road trip planned this weekend, and on our road trip, we will be re-listening to the prologue, the interlude, and the epilogue.
Fun.
So that we can come up with more questions for your next Q&A.
This feels like a good time because you mentioned the joy making.
Yeah.
If people out there are interested in the world of Galarian, go to the Pathfinder wiki. It is the most wonderful rabbit hole on earth. You can just hit the random page and read some wonderful detail about the world of Galarian that has been established either in an AP or just in a gazetteer type thing. It's a really amazing place, and part of why I love continuing to play in Paizo's
pick
world.
any proper noun you've heard on this show and look it up, and then just start clicking shit. And you will stumble into weird things like the joy making or other wonderful things.
All right. Mandy asks, was there a specific reason Barnabas revealed himself when he did?
There are two reasons. One of which is story-driven. I wanted to do honor to Johnny bringing up the idea that the counseling that Dora was experiencing was also having an impact on Reynard at the time. Eventually we learned Barnabas. And I knew that Barnabas had been suffering what he had been suffering for slightly longer than Dora. And so my thought was like, once Dora hit the latent stage with her particular madness, I'm like, in a day or two, whenever it feels right, I think that's when Barnabas will kind of click out of this. So I wanted to honor those little bits of story that the listener didn't know yet at that point. And then number two, I just thought it'd be funny. Like we were finishing that evening, and I was like, oh, come on, naked guy.
And she deserves it.
yes,
frankly,
right.
Been through a lot.
A little bit of comfort.
Goes a long way. All right, another actual question from Lauren.
Yes.
What does the GM prep for a session look like? I'm fascinated with the creative and pre-production process.
So our friend Lauren, who runs a number of wonderful podcasts,
including Fox and Stallion.
Yes, I was just going to do that. Talk about it, Kitty, for a second.
Fox and Stallion is a Sherlock Holmes adjacent Victorian comedy audio podcast that I am on. Can I say you are on it? Yes, I can.
Yes,
You've been released. Yes.
Yes, I'm in a cameo.
Rob is on it. He's also the narrator on every adventure. Lots of fun. Really, really funny if you're into that sort of thing.
Yes, do please listen.
Hashtag 224B Baker.
All of Lauren's shows are wonderful. So she asks about DM prep, but I know she's more interested probably in the creative and pre-production process because she is a podcast producer herself. This is a complicated question to answer. I'll see if I can do something concise here. I probably won't, and so I'll just cut this out, but I'll try. The DM prep for this particular session looks a lot like what most DM prep looks like, which is making sure you have your head wrapped around the creatures, encounters, and rules that you expect, emphasis on expect, will be involved in that particular evening. So if I expect that the players will be about to participate in an underwater encounter, and we haven't had a bunch of those, I gotta dive back into the 400-page rule book and go, all right, so how does underwater combat work? Get my head wrapped around it. If I know they're gonna have like an airborne sort of like dogfight kind of thing, I gotta like remind myself how all that works. If there's an enemy that's gonna do a lot of grappling, we talk a lot about how complicated the grappling rules are. Try to re-look at those and familiarize myself with the statistics and the crunch with all the things that they're going to fight, with the hope that I can actually, when we're playing, throw most of that prep away and just play the game so that I'm not stuck. Okay, well, let me, now that we've gotten there, look up the rules. I mean, sometimes that happens, but I try to have that not happen. And then a lot of it is about reviewing for myself the motivations of whoever they're dealing with, and doing a little flow charting for myself of like, okay, if such and such happens, how might they respond if such and such happens, just so I have something to fall back on if I don't get an idea when we're playing. The larger question is, this is my first experience trying to structure this thing that we do as a game into something that is actually entertainment constructed for other people to listen to. And that piece is new and is really, really tricky. That involves a lot of writing and a lot of throwing my writing away. The first decision I have to make every week is, do I want or need a scripted intro to the sessions? Some weeks it feels very important to stop, talk about what's just happened, maybe queue up some questions, maybe if it's been a long day of battle, remind everybody how the day actually started, because it was like 6 weeks ago now that day actually started, you know what I mean? That happens a lot. Or sometimes it's just like, yeah, we're fighting shit. You remember where we are, let's go. So I have to make that decision. And then, talking with a couple of writer friends the last couple of weeks, we were talking about what this particular job is like for something like this, and we ended up likening it to, I'm essentially show running a mystery TV show where I have absolutely, not only, I have no control over what the protagonists do, I don't even know what they're going to do. I can't control where they go, I can't control what they think. I can have a whole bunch of clues about their backgrounds prepared, but I have no idea the order in which they may encounter them, if ever. And most interestingly, I can't control the interpretation they have of what happens to them. So that's the piece that I have to be very fluid about. So I have these tools, like in the first book, I have these tools of these dreams that I can use to parcel out information. I have these tools of the psychometry once we landed on that as a thing that we're doing. But I didn't have any idea which of any of those they would ever encounter and or which order they would do them in. Like, there is an iteration of book one. Imagine this, y'all. If in chapter 6, the very first thing Dora reads is Tima's wedding ring, the shape of the entire act is completely different.
Wow.
It just kind of blows your mind. And like,
That was the wedding vision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So imagine if that's the first thing you heard. Now, what I had for that vision was the same story, but it was doing a very different thing at that time. So if Katie had done that one first, I would not have introduced the name Tima. They didn't know that Gulliver Vatican. The mic drop for that would have actually been, holy shit, y'all, the guy that died in chapter 1 was a huge part of your life. The thing that ended up happening in chapter 15 for us, that would have been the mic drop there. But they would have experienced Dr. Vaticus in that dream with no relationship to the character. And there was a lot of relationship to that character by the time the vision actually happened in chapter 34 or whatever.
If we had seen it then, would the real Reynard have been in the vision as the familiar?
No, because I had not even thought of that yet.
Yeah.
At that point, I hadn't even thought of it.
Right.
I mean, I guess I had, but I had not played it out. So, like, with all of those, I just have to come up with the ideas for what I think they might learn and then just roll with whatever order happens and rewrite. Like, for the dreams, I knew I wanted to tell a story of introducing the character of Oliver Zandals at some point. The first one, somehow, I sprinkle him in there. And the second one, he's more involved. The third one, the Tatterman is more involved. And the fourth one, I don't know, something crazy happens where we have a meta moment where we all know that we're dreaming. But I didn't know what order things would happen. So I had a dream written for all 4 of them that was basically an iteration of the dream that Grip had, where there was just a fleeting reference to Oliver Zandalus that would have made no sense or they wouldn't have clocked. I think in like Dora's, she's walking down the hallway, one of the books had the face of a man with long white hair on it. Something like that.
Yeah.
So then I have to, like, once we clear Grip's dream, I'm like, okay, rewrite all the rest. Now I want them to learn this, or that. I don't know which order it's going to happen in, or even if it is going to happen, and then just keep rewriting it. So it's a lot of writing, Lauren. It's a lot of writing. That's the answer to that question. But ultimately, the goal is to throw it away and try to be present for what they're doing.
And then it's an old, I think, military adage that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. In this case, we're the enemy.
Yes.
Because he doesn't know what the fuck we're going to do.
Sometimes the dice are the enemy.
Sometimes the dice are often the enemy. But there, in another game we played, Age of Worms, so like the last campaign we were playing before this group started this, we made a decision, and I'm saying we, but I'm looking at Johnny when I say it. Made a decision, did a thing that had us skip an entire book of this adventure path.
Yeah.
So there's no way Rob was prepared for that.
No, and like to speak to Johnny's hatred of railroading, the last thing I'm going to do when he does that is say, oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
Right.
I'm like, that's what they did. Oh, we got to figure this shit out. All right, we're jumping ahead to something they may not be prepared for. There were pros and cons to what happened.
Yeah,
Like certain
there
enemies
definitely
were
were.
completely unprepared for them, but they also lacked a whole bunch of information that would have been really fucking useful.
But
So-
to be fair, knowing what you told me of that book that we skipped,
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't have gotten that information.
No.
Anyway,
You would have bu-
had
you-
we even gone through the
you
book.
would have bombed
because
that
we would
book.
have
You would have
messed
bombed
it up
it.
so bad.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to go.
Well,
I
thank
have
you
to
for
go.
joining us, Michaela.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much
so
for coming.
much.
This was fun.
If ever I can come back, like call me.
Yeah,
Please
let's,
do, yeah,
let's
this
get
was
her
fun.
back in for book 2.
Oh,
We'll have you come in for book 2.
Please, I promise I will come up with even more questions and become
Yay.
more articulate the more I listen and
Fun.
learn about these games, because it has been, you guys have been a bit of a gateway drug, truly, like in the very,
Excellent.
very best way. So thank you for your delight and your delirium as we have traveled together. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Michaela.
It's
Thank
my
you.
pleasure.
Mwah.
Dark Nexus is a creation of Plug and Hum Productions. This podcast uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Incorporated, which are used under Paizo's community use policy. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. This podcast is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo Inc. For more information about Paizo's community use policy, please visit paizo.com/communityuse. And for more information about Paizo and Paizo products, please visit paizo.com. That's Paizo.com.